Welcome, the Anointed Ones. Congratulations, Chosen One, your suffering just got evicted, and it's never coming back. Let that sink in. For years you've been walking through fire that never seemed to end. You've carried storms that looked permanent, battles that felt endless, and trials that made you wonder if God had forgotten your address. But here's the truth no one tells you: even the darkest seasons have an expiration date. Psychologists say the human brain remembers trauma longer than joy. It lingers, it echoes, it replays. But spiritually, the opposite is true. Once a chosen one survives the breaking point, the pain loses its right to follow them into the next chapter. What tormented you yesterday simply doesn't have clearance to step into your tomorrow. And here's where the humor kicks in. Hell thought you were a forever subscription. They assumed you'd be stuck in pain on auto-renew like Netflix charging your card without permission. But God just hit the cancel button, and no matter how much they beg, your suffering won't get reinstated. This isn't optimism, it's reality. You've passed the test. The contract is void, the cycle is broken. The very thing that was designed to bury you has already served its only purpose: to prove you are unshakable. And from this day forward, the words stand firm. You will never have to go through that again. Number 1. What tried to break you cannot repeat its cycle. What tried to break you cannot repeat its cycle because cycles only work on the unhealed. Once you've walked through the furnace and endured what most people would collapse under, the pattern itself loses its grip. The reason it felt so brutal and so relentless was because it wasn't just an attack. It was the enemy's attempt to create a loop to keep you circling in pain, disappointment, and defeat. Cycles of suffering are designed to drain people until they lose their fight. But here's the truth: you broke the loop by outlasting it. That season was not random. It was calculated to feel endless. You might have noticed how the pain kept repeating in different disguises. Betrayal after betrayal, loss after loss, setback after setback. That wasn't coincidence. It was spiritual design. Darkness survives by recycling misery. If one weapon works against you, it tries it again and again until you break. But when you didn't break, something happened in the unseen. The cycle collapsed on itself. Think about it. How many times did the same lesson show up in your life wearing a different face? How many times did you ask yourself, why does this keep happening to me? It kept happening because the enemy had confidence that you'd eventually surrender to the pattern. But the moment you endured long enough without folding, the pattern was destroyed at its root. That's why it can never repeat itself with the same force again. There's a reason survivors have a different kind of authority. It's not just because they made it out, it's because their spirit now carries immunity. You didn't just survive what tried to destroy you, you exhausted it, you drained it of its energy, and it has nothing left to feed on in your life. The suffering had an assignment, and you fulfilled it. That's why you will never have to walk that road again. The cycle has expired. The enemy doesn't have the power to invent new torment out of thin air. It relies on patterns, generational wounds, familiar triggers. You've already disarmed the most dangerous ones by refusing to bow. So what tried to break you once cannot repeat itself. It's over permanently. You've not only outlasted the storm, you've shut down the system that produced it. And that is why you will never face that same nightmare again. Number 2, the contract of suffering has expired. The contract of suffering has expired because pain always comes with terms, even if they're hidden from you. Nothing you went through was endless, even though it felt that way. Every hardship has a purpose, a limit, and an expiration date set in the spiritual realm before it ever touched your life. The reason it dragged on for so long is because there were lessons, strengths, and revelations that could not be rushed. Once you absorbed them, once you grew into the person you were meant to become through it, the contract had no more ground to stand on. It could not extend itself, and it could not demand more from you. Think of suffering as a legal case in a courtroom you never saw. Every battle you faced had conditions attached. The permission given to the enemy to touch certain parts of your life was never permanent. It had a boundary. The tears you shed, the prayers you whispered in exhaustion, the nights you almost gave up, all of it was accounted for in that contract, and when the appointed time ran out, the case against you was dismissed. That's why now you feel a shift, a release, a weightlifting that you can't fully explain. It's not luck, it's not coincidence, it's spiritual law. The most dangerous lie pain tells you is that it will never end. That lie is designed to weaken you, to make you collapse before you reach the finish line. But because you endured past the point where most people break, you've lived to see the clause that pain never reveals until the appointed time. And that time has been reached. The contract has been fulfilled in your life, and it cannot renew itself. This is why the future won't look like your past. Even if the enemy wanted to bring the same destruction back, it no longer has legal access. You've served the sentence, you've paid the cost, and heaven has marked it as complete. What once held authority to enter your life has now been stripped of all rights to touch you again. Your suffering did not outlive you, you outlived it. The contract ended the moment you walked out of the season carrying wisdom instead of defeat. And because it's expired, you'll never have to face that same pain again. It is finished. Number 3, your bloodline debt was cleared through you. Your bloodline debt was cleared through you, and that's why your suffering felt heavier than what most people around you carried. Some of the weight you bore wasn't even yours, it was generational. Families passed down more than just names, habits, or traditions. They also passed down unhealed wounds, unfinished battles, and cycles of destruction that quietly destroyed generation after generation. Someone in the line eventually has to pay the price to stop it. And that someone was you. That's why your struggle felt like it didn't match your life at times. You may have looked around and wondered, why am I carrying so much when I didn't even do anything to deserve all of this? The truth is, you were chosen to be the breaker. The one who stands in the middle and says, this ends with me. Your pain was not just about you, it was about freeing those who come after you. When a bloodline has unfinished debt, it demands repayment in different ways. For some, it shows up as poverty that never lifts, or relationships that always crumble, or sickness that reappears every generation. But when a chosen one steps in, the weight of all those patterns gets placed on them because they're the ones strong enough to withstand it. And once they survive it, the cycle breaks permanently. That's exactly what happened in your life. The breakdowns, the betrayals, the endless pressure. It wasn't just random suffering, it was the final collection of generational debts that had to be settled. You were the vessel that carried the fire, and by surviving it, you paid off what your ancestors couldn't. That's why the ones after you will never taste the same bitterness. The road they walked will be clearer because you cleared it. This is why your life will never repeat the same torment again. You were not just living through personal trials. You were standing in as the representative for your entire lineage. And now, because you endured and did not collapse, the bloodline has been reset. The debt is gone, the curse is broken, and you are free to live in a future that is no longer chained to the past. What once belonged to generations of pain ends here because you survived. Number 4, pain wasn't just endured, it was transmuted. Pain wasn't just endured, it was transmuted, and that is why it cannot return to torment you in the same way again. Endurance alone would have left you bruised and scarred, still vulnerable to the same cycles of hurt. But what you did was something far rarer. You turned the very poison that was meant to destroy you into strength that cannot be undone. That's the secret of the chosen ones. You don't just sit inside the fire, you let the fire reshape you until it loses its power. Every betrayal, every loss, every humiliation was meant to inject bitterness into your soul, to keep you small, angry, and defeated. But instead of letting it rot you from the inside, you burned it into wisdom. You learned how to recognize deception before it speaks, how to see danger before it manifests, and how to guard your soul without hardening your heart. That transformation is irreversible. What once had the power to wound you can't reach you anymore, because it no longer fits the version of you that walked out of that fire. This is what transmutation looks like in the life of a chosen one. Pain no longer sits in you as trauma, it exists now as authority. The sleepless nights became discernment, the loneliness became depth, the tears became clarity. Even the shame was forged into a shield that makes you untouchable in the places where you once were weak. The very weight that almost crushed you became the weightlifting that gave you spiritual muscle. This is why you don't have to fear the repetition of the same old suffering. You didn't just escape it, you metabolized it. Poison can't kill you if your system already knows how to turn it into medicine. The enemy has no power left to hurt you with the same tools because those tools have already been broken down and transformed into your weapons. Your pain has been transmuted into something immortal. What once stalked you has now become the very thing that protects you. That is why it will never return in the same form again. You didn't just survive, you rewrote the rules of the battlefield, and now everything that comes against you has to face the upgraded version of who you became through suffering. And number 5, the enemy burned its last weapon against you. The enemy burned its last weapon against you, and that's why your suffering felt like an all-out war with no pause, no breath, no relief. It wasn't your imagination, it truly was hell emptying its arsenal on you. Every fiery dart, every hidden trap, every betrayal, every attack on your mind, body and spirit was the accumulation of years of stored-up rage aimed at one goal: your destruction. The intensity wasn't random, it was strategic. They thought if they used everything at once, you'd collapse and never rise again. But what they didn't calculate was the God inside you. That season felt like the end because the enemy was convinced it would be the end. They threw not just minor distractions, but their sharpest, deadliest weapons. The betrayals were deeper, the losses heavier, the spiritual warfare more suffocating than anything you had known before. You weren't just dealing with ordinary pressure, you were under the concentrated strike of every fear and weakness they believed would break you. And yet you're here. That survival alone proves something crucial. The arsenal is empty. What the enemy doesn't want you to realize is that attacks are not infinite. There is no endless supply of new tricks. Evil recycles what works. But once it fails, the power of that weapon dissolves. That's why it all hit at once. It was their last gamble, their final attempt. They wanted to finish you before your breakthrough because they knew that once you survived, you would no longer be touchable in the same way. Now that you've walked through it, there are no sharper weapons left. What was supposed to bury you has exposed you instead. The last weapon didn't take you out. It revealed you. It revealed that your spirit cannot be destroyed, that your calling cannot be cancelled, and that your destiny cannot be stolen. What they planned for your end only uncovered your immortality in God. This is why you can walk forward with confidence. If the worst they had couldn't take you down, nothing lesser ever will. The enemy already spent its final bullet and you're still breathing, still moving, still chosen. That was their last shot, and your survival is living proof that no weapon formed against you will ever prosper again. Number 6. Survival shifted you out of their reach. Survival shifted you out of their reach. And that is why life feels different now, even if you can't fully explain it. You're not just stronger, you're operating on a completely different level. The same environment, the same people, the same traps may still exist, but they can't touch you the way they once did. Spiritually, you've been elevated. You no longer vibrate on the frequency where that suffering had access to you. That's why old situations don't pull you back in. Why old temptations feel empty, and why old attacks don't sting the way they used to. You've outgrown them. Pain works on certain frequencies. When you are vulnerable, broken, or unaware of your authority, those frequencies were wide open. That's why it felt like suffering kept finding you over and over. But when you endured and survived, your very survival changed your energy. You matured, your discernment sharpened, your spirit expanded. What once could reach you now feels foreign, like static you can't even tune into anymore. This is why those who once had power over you no longer recognize the new version of you. They may try the same tricks, use the same words, or set the same traps, but it's as if they're aiming at a ghost. Their arrows don't land because you no longer stand in that place of vulnerability. Survival shifted you into a new dimension, and in that dimension they have no access. Think about how many times people have tried to provoke you lately and failed, or how many storms that would have crushed you in the past barely move you now. That isn't by accident. It's evidence that you've moved beyond their reach. Spiritually, you've climbed out of their atmosphere and they're still stuck below, clawing at empty air. This is why you never have to fear going back to what broke you. That suffering doesn't even exist on your current level anymore. You can see it, you can remember it, but it cannot touch you. No matter how much they try to pull you down, they're like hunters shooting arrows into an empty sky. You are simply not there. Survival didn't just prove your strength, it relocated your spirit into a place where only victory can live. Number 7. Your spirit became an immune system. Your spirit became an immune system, and that's one of the greatest rewards of surviving what should have destroyed you. In the beginning, the trauma caught you off guard. It hit you in places you didn't know were weak, and it tore open wounds you didn't know you had. It broke you because you had no defense against it, but survival doesn't leave you the same. It recalibrates your inner being. Now your spirit is no longer exposed in the same way. Every attack you went through trained you to recognize danger before it takes root, lies before they sound convincing, and darkness before it disguises itself as light. What once slipped in quietly now feels like an alarm going off in your chest. You can sense betrayal before the mask falls, manipulation before the strings pull, and destruction before the cracks appear. That's not paranoia, that's your spirit producing antibodies. The same way a body fights off sickness faster once it's been exposed, your spirit has developed resistance to the very forces that tried to crush you, and that resistance is permanent. This is why you'll never go through that exact same suffering again. The trauma didn't just hurt you, it educated you. It reprogrammed your discernment. The lessons weren't wasted. They rewired your soul with wisdom and resilience that can't be unlearned. You no longer welcome what you once tolerated, and you no longer ignore the signals you once brushed aside. The immune system of your spirit now filters out what doesn't belong. The enemy hates this part the most. Before, they could blindside you with familiar tactics, but now every move feels predictable. What shattered you then can't even scratch you now because your soul instantly rejects it. Even the thought of going back into old cycles makes your spirit recoil. That's not fear, that's immunity. That's the mark of someone who survived and came out transformed. Your suffering built something eternal inside you, a defense system that keeps you safe without you even having to fight as hard as before. You won't walk into the same traps again because your very spirit will block them before they even reach you. The trauma that once broke you has now become your greatest protection. Number 8. What was meant to kill you became your seal. What was meant to kill you became your seal, and that's why you can never be viewed the same way again in the spirit realm. Attacks don't just end when you survive them. They leave a mark, a signature that identifies you as untouchable. Darkness knows when it has failed, and it respects failure in the most twisted way. Every attempt against your life, every track, every betrayal, every near ending was supposed to silence you for good. But the fact that you walked out of it alive means those forces stamped you with an invisible seal that cannot be erased. This seal isn't something you can show people, but it's undeniable in the way life responds to you now. The enemy knows you are no longer a candidate for destruction. You've been tested at the highest level. And because you survived, you carry a spiritual signature that declares, this one is marked. That mark is recognition in the unseen, that what once had power over you no longer has any claim. It's not that future challenges won't come, but none of them can touch you the way that last one did. The seal acts as proof that the enemy's most vicious attempt failed, and because of that failure, it lost permanent rights to your destiny. This is why chosen ones walk with a quiet authority. They don't need to prove themselves, their survival already did. You may not realize it, but every step you take carries the weight of that testimony. Your very existence now preaches louder than words. I am still here. And in spiritual terms, being still here after all that was unleashed against you is not survival, it's triumph. The seal also shifts how heaven sees you. Angels' favor and divine protection respond differently to someone who has passed through fire and emerged intact. God himself allows that seal to stand as evidence of your covenant with him. It's not something you earned through perfection, but something that was branded on you through survival. So understand this. What tried to end you has now become your eternal proof. The very thing designed to bury you became the certificate of your authority. And because you bear that seal, darkness recognizes you as the one it could not destroy, and therefore can never own again. Number 9, you lived through what they thought was impossible. You lived through what they thought was impossible, and that truth alone sets you apart in a way that can't be explained by ordinary logic. This isn't just about surviving hardship. It's about walking out of situations that history says people don't come back from. You carried pain that should have left you permanently broken, wounds that should have defined your entire life, and circumstances that should have buried you long before now. But instead of being erased, you became the contradiction. Your very existence mocks the predictions that were made about you. There are certain experiences that people whisper about because they know most don't recover. Betrayal so deep they strip a person of trust. Losses so heavy they crush the will to live. Oppression so suffocating it kills identity from the inside. You didn't just face one of those, you faced them layered, relentless, almost back to back. By all accounts, you weren't supposed to get up again, and yet here you are. Not only breathing, but thinking, moving, building, rising. That is no small thing. That is a declaration that you're not bound by the same laws as everyone else. What nearly buried you has now become the proof that you cannot be buried. People expected the story to end at your collapse, but your rising has exposed the limits of their understanding. They thought you were weak, but your endurance told a different story. They thought you were finished, but your spirit had chapters they couldn't see. Even the enemy underestimated you, believing that throwing impossibility in your path would secure your silence forever. Instead, you turned that impossibility into evidence of God's hand on your life. Now, your presence itself is disruptive. It unsettles people because you're not supposed to be here, not supposed to be standing this tall after what you've been through. You become living proof that survival isn't just about breathing. It's about defying the laws of destruction. And because you lived through the impossible, you've stepped into a category where ordinary rules don't apply anymore. The darkness that tried to bury you can never bury you again because it already showed its strongest cards and failed. You are the contradiction that cannot be erased. You are the survivor who became untouchable. Number 10. Your story reached God's courtroom. Your story reached God's courtroom, and that changes everything. There are moments in life where the suffering you carry isn't just personal. It's spiritual evidence presented before heaven itself. Every tear, every betrayal, every injustice was not overlooked. It was recorded, documented, and weighed on divine scales. That's why it felt like things dragged on longer than they should have, because heaven was gathering the full record. But once the record was complete, the ruling came down. The case against you is closed, and it's closed permanently. Suffering has a divine expiration date. No matter how endless it seemed, it was never eternal. Heaven allowed it for a season, not to crush you, but to refine you, to stretch you, to reveal what was hidden in you. But when that purpose was fulfilled, the trial reached its limit. And unlike human systems where cases can be reopened, retried, or prolonged by corruption, God's courtroom doesn't operate like that. His judgment is final. And when he declares something finished, no force in heaven or hell can overturn it. That's why you will never repeat that season. It wasn't human mercy that released you. It wasn't luck that spared you. It was divine judgment. God himself slammed the gavel and said, "Enough!" What had permission to touch you no longer has legal standing. The enemy cannot recycle the same destruction against you because heaven has already ruled it inadmissible. Spiritually speaking, the case file has been stamped with a seal that says, "Closed, do not reopen." This is why your life feels different now. It's not just that circumstances shifted. It's that the entire spiritual atmosphere has shifted around you. The sentence has been served. The judgment has been passed. The chains have been broken. And because the ruling came from the highest authority in existence, there's no appeal, no loophole, no back door. You are walking in freedom that was secured not by chance, but by verdict. And the beauty of it is this: your story now stands as evidence in heaven's records that God defends his chosen. You're not just free, you're vindicated. And because the ruling came from God himself, you can step boldly into your future knowing this truth. That season is over, forever. Number 11. You weren't just tested, you were initiated. You weren't just tested, you were initiated. That distinction matters because tests end with a grade, but initiation ends with a new identity. The pain you endured wasn't a series of random misfortunes thrown at you without meaning. It was a spiritual initiation into higher authority, a passage that demanded you endure things most people would never survive. You were being shaped, prepared, and elevated into a realm where ordinary strength would not suffice. That's why your suffering was so specific, so personal, and so consuming. It was the price of entry into who you were always destined to become. Initiation is never gentle. It strips you of illusions, it tears away false comfort, and it exposes your deepest weaknesses so they can be reforged into power. That's what your pain did. It wasn't just trying to break you, it was remolding you. The fire was the proving ground, the place where endurance became authority and survival became spiritual rank. And once you have walked through that fire, you don't go back into the furnace again. No one is ever initiated twice. This is why your life has shifted so dramatically. You didn't simply make it through a hard season. You crossed a threshold. You've stepped into spiritual weight you couldn't have carried before. That's why you see differently, discern differently, and even walk differently. The pain stripped you of what was shallow and left you with what is eternal. It turned your scars into symbols of access, showing that you've paid the cost most people never would. The suffering you endured wasn't wasted. It was the currency of authority. Every sleepless night, every tear, every betrayal was a toll you had to pay to walk into this new level of being. And now, because the price has been paid in full, you'll never face that same initiation again. That chapter has been sealed, and you carry the mark of someone who has been through the fire and earned their place. You weren't just tested to prove something. You were initiated to become something, and now that you've become it, you cannot be unmade. The pain crowned you with authority, and authority never returns to ashes. You've already crossed the threshold, and there is no going back. Number 12. Your enemies have been depleted by your survival. Your enemies have been depleted by your survival, and that's why their attacks don't carry the same weight anymore. What they unleashed against you wasn't just a casual strike. It cost them something. Every plot they designed, every word they spoke against you, every scheme they orchestrated drained their own life force. Darkness never gives power freely. It always demands a trade. And while they thought they were trading your peace for their power, they were actually draining themselves dry, trying to destroy someone they could never defeat. For years, they invested energy, time, and obsession into your downfall. They strategized, they collaborated, and they exhausted themselves trying to make sure you wouldn't rise. But survival has a way of bankrupting enemies. The more you endured, the more their resources bled out. The fact that you're still standing means all of their investments failed, and now they're left empty-handed, worn out, weakened, and frustrated by the futility of it all. This is why they cannot repeat what they did. They don't have the stamina to fight you again. Their words have lost power, their tricks have lost effectiveness, and their alliances have crumbled under the weight of their failure. Spiritually, they are tired. They've spent their greatest energy trying to break you, and it didn't work. What's left in them now is bitterness, but bitterness has no fuel to sustain another war. That's the hidden beauty of your survival. It didn't just preserve you, it dismantled them. Every time they thought they were weakening you, they were actually draining themselves further. Every plot backfired in the long run, not because you weren't touched by it, but because you refused to stay down. You became stronger and they became weaker. Now, they look at you and realize something terrifying. They have nothing left to use against you. They cannot run the same play twice, and they don't have the creativity to invent anything new. They are spiritually bankrupt, emptied by their own obsession with your downfall. That's why the war against you has ended. Not only did you outlast the attacks, but in surviving them, you stripped your enemies of the very power they thought they had. You are standing, and they are spent. Number 13. The memory of your survival now haunts them. The memory of your survival now haunts them. And that is a prison far stronger than anything you could build with your own hands. Your enemies don't just recall their actions, they recall the outcome. They remember the nights they plotted, the words they spoke, the traps they set, and the certainty they carried that this time they had you finished. They were so sure you wouldn't rise again. But now that confidence has been replaced with something they cannot escape, the undeniable truth that you survived it all. Survival isn't just a victory for you, it's a torment for them. Every time they think of you, they're forced to relive the failure of their schemes. The human mind doesn't let go of humiliation easily, and nothing humiliates more than watching someone thrive after you've tried to bury them. That image of your resilience, that memory of their failure, is burned into them. It follows them in silence, in dreams, in conversations they can't even finish. They live with the knowledge that their best wasn't enough to destroy you. This is why the idea of coming against you again terrifies them. On the surface, they may still talk boldly, but beneath the surface, fear grips them. Fear of wasting more time, fear of another failure, fear of confirming yet again that you cannot be broken. Even if they dared to try, the memory of their last defeat would paralyze them before they could move. That memory is its own punishment. It keeps them bound in hesitation, unable to launch the same kind of warfare. Your survival has become their haunting. It echoes louder than any word you could speak, louder than any revenge you could seek. You don't have to case them, defend yourself, or retaliate, because their own minds do the work for you. They are haunted not just by what they did, but by the undeniable fact that it didn't work. That haunting robs them of the courage to try again. So while you've moved forward, healed and grown, they remain stuck in the shadow of your survival. That's their cage now. And no matter how much they wish to escape it, they can't. Because the memory of your survival is the reminder of their greatest failure. And that failure follows them everywhere. Number 14. Your life has shifted into the aftermath of victory. Your life has shifted into the aftermath of victory, and this is the part that often feels surreal. For so long, survival was your normal. You were accustomed to patching yourself up, bracing for the next blow, and living in the tension of constant battle. But that cycle has ended. You're no longer in the mode of recovery. You've crossed into revelation. The scars are no longer bleeding. They've hardened into marks of authority. The weight you once carried has now become the very evidence that you were chosen for something far greater than endurance. You were chosen for demonstration. What makes this season different is that it is not about fighting to stay alive. It's about unveiling who you became in the fire. The version of you that exists now could not have been born without the crushing, the breaking, and the stripping away of the old self. That's why this season won't repeat. Recovery is temporary, but revelation is eternal. You were never meant to keep circling that same battlefield. That war was never designed to be your permanent address. It was a passage, and now you've stepped into what it crowned you to be. When a soldier returns from war, they don't go back to the same trenches. Instead, their survival qualifies them for honor, respect, and new assignments. Spiritually, the same has happened to you. The battle is over, and your survival is the seal that says, this one has been tested, tried, and proven. The crown you carry isn't made of gold. It's made of the authority you now walk in, the wisdom that can't be taught in classrooms, and the resilience that can't be stolen by circumstance. You'll never go through that season again because it wasn't designed for repetition. It was a furnace with one purpose: to forge you into someone untouchable by the same fire. And now, every step you take in this aftermath is a step into demonstration. People will begin to see the unveiled strength, the radiance, and the power of someone who went through what was meant to end them and came out crowned instead. This is not recovery. This is revelation. This is not the aftermath of defeat. It is the aftermath of victory. And from this point forward, your life is proof that what was meant to bury you only positioned you for your coronation. You've walked through storms that were designed to break you, endured battles that seemed endless, and faced attacks that should have buried you. And yet, here you stand, alive, unshakable, and crowned by the very fire that tried to consume you. Every moment of suffering, every betrayal, every setback has served a purpose greater than survival itself. It wasn't just about enduring pain, it was about transmuting it into wisdom, authority, and an untouchable spirit. What tried to destroy you has now become the very proof of your invincibility. The cycles that once haunted your life have been shattered, the contracts of suffering have expired, and the debts that ran through your bloodline have been paid in full. Your enemies are drained, haunted by their own failure, while your spirit stands fortified with immunity and resilience that cannot be shaken. The fire was never meant to be permanent. It was a crown in disguise, and now you wear it fully. You are no longer in recovery, you are in revelation. You operate on a level where the old attacks, the old pain, and the old cycles simply cannot reach you. What was once your trial is now your testimony, stamped in eternity and sealed by God Himself. From this moment forward, nothing can repeat what you survived. You have crossed the threshold of initiation, passed the courtroom of heaven, and emerged as someone untouchable. Your life is a living proof that destruction can be transformed into dominion, that the very forces meant to bury you have become the foundations of your authority. You have not only survived, you have redefined what it means to rise. So stand tall in the aftermath of your victory. Walk boldly into your future, knowing that you carry a spiritual seal that no enemy can break. Let every step you take be a declaration that the impossible has been conquered. Your journey through the fire was never for nothing. It was the making of a chosen one, and the world will now see what emerges from someone who has truly passed through the unthinkable and come out crowned. This is your time. This is your revelation. You are done with the suffering that tried to define you, and from here on, every season of your life will reflect the authority, strength, and victory that only a chosen one can carry. If this message resonates with you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel and join a community of chosen ones who are stepping into their power, walking in victory, and breaking cycles that were never meant to define them. Hit the like button to affirm that you recognize your own strength and authority, and leave a comment to share your story, because your journey can inspire someone else to rise above the impossible. Share this video with anyone who needs to be reminded that what tried to destroy them has already been defeated. Every subscription, every like, every comment, and every share fuels a movement of people who refuse to be broken, who refuse to be held back, and who are stepping boldly into the revelation of their destiny. Be part of this powerful circle. The world needs to see the chosen ones rising, and your voice matters. Step in, engage, and let's celebrate the victory that is already yours. God bless you.